To Vision Plus.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Vision Plus, and I think it is so wonderful that we are figuring out how to have joy in caregiving. We start out life, I think, with a pretty red hat. I'm the red hat woman. And then my daughter went to the Coast Guard, so we do whatever our life's work is. And then one of the family members needs to have a lot of caregiving, and that's the way the hats we wear in life then. And you know what? The monkey is on your back, sometimes a double monkey, to take care of you and your loved ones. Now, how in the world can we do that and have a little joy about it? It's been real interesting the last 10 years with Tony after he had his first heart attack, and then in December had a stent put in, and then in April had, just all kinds of things. But that, because he's a Marine and a German and an engineer, he's still going to work every day, or well, most every day. And he goes to kidney dialysis, so you're going to hear a little bit. He agreed to tell about when he took care of his mother, and I think that when she went through the menopause with 5 brothers. We're going to have you meet now Brenda Bell. Brenda is just a lifesaver for so many people. She's worked 12 years with HIMSI, and she has a story that will just be, well, she and I both had tears running down out of our eyes after we were talking the other day. But she's, even though she came from Indiana, and we'll just still let her live right here in Alabama. And then she lived most of the time in La Crosse, Wisconsin after that. And I love the way she said she married, and then she decided later to start her family. So we kind of hear how she took care of a lot of people that needed a lot of care. And caregiving is even more. I was just thinking about my dad when he passed. I don't even think he had some renal disease also, and his kidney failed. They didn't even have kidney dialysis just a few years ago. So it's incredible to have all the marvelous things that we have. We didn't have a HIMSI that could run over and get us. When Tony fainted, passed out 5 times, but this week he hit his head on the glass kitchen table, broke a little chip out. I'm mad about that. Then he hit his head on the ornamental iron kitchen chairs. Then he hit his head on one chair, and then he hit his head on the floor. And I think I'm smart till it comes to emergencies, and I didn't know. I looked at him and I thought, I'll call my son, I'll call my, and I thought, no, 911. Finally, I get to call 911. I called them, and they answered, and I said, my husband fell, he's not talking, and he's on the floor. And so anyway, about that time, by the time they got his name, where we lived, and all that stuff, his eyes opened. Now, he's still laying in the floor, and he weighs close to twice what I do, and I couldn't get him out of the floor. Didn't know whether you were supposed to get him out of the floor or not. That was a little confusing to me. So I said, he said, don't have them come. So I said, okay. So I'll call our son. And so he didn't live many miles away. I called, so I told the girl, the 911 girl, she was real sweet. I said, he doesn't want you to come. He wants us to call our son. So I called our son, and he said, I'll be there in 10 or 15 minutes, or 15 or 20 minutes. And so when I hung up with him, the police called. It was the most precious police woman that I couldn't believe somebody could be that kind and gentle and sweet. She must have got her experience at HIMSI. And anyway, she called and said, Mrs. Libhart, can I come there and help you get your husband out of the floor? I thought, first of all, how'd she know who she's talking to? Second, how'd she know my husband's in the floor? So I guess the way the 911 works somehow with the police, but it's all incredibly wonderful. And I said, my son will be here to help. And she said, how long will it be? And I said, well, 15 minutes or so. And I know she was thinking, I can't be there this soon. So she said, okay, but you call me if you need me. So Anthony came, we got him in the car, we got him to the doctor who put him in the hospital in the emergency room. And then I had to find my way up to wherever he was. But it all worked out, and he later that week went on to work. So he's just one of those typical Marine jarheads, and he went on to work. So I want you to meet a friend of mine. She has been so good to my husband, and just unbelievable what all she's done for this company and for a lot of people like you and me. Her name is Brenda Bell.
Hi, I'm Brenda Bell. Bonnie, thank you so much for asking me to speak this evening.
I'm just so happy that you could.
I don't feel worthy speaking to anyone as a caregiver. I've never considered myself much of a caregiver. I've always looked at others as being the caregivers, my mother and my grandmother. And somehow, through the course of events, I found myself, after getting married at the age of 18 and eventually starting my own family and raising my children, in a position of being able to get my EMT license, not till I was 40 years old. And to me, that was such a blessing and such a wonderful thing, and how exciting it was going to be an EMT and to run around with the lights and sirens and all of the excitement. But that's not what it was. That's not what it meant to me. There's not a whole lot of lights and sirens and excitement in the emergency medical services world. The norm is what happened to you, Bonnie, with Tony falling. To us as emergency caregivers, that would be considered a routine call. That was far from routine for you in your life and in Tony's life, and for your son to receive that call from you. I have been given a gift, I suppose, to understand that that's far from routine. And I was placed in a position to be one of those that was fortunate enough to be able to show up at your house or at your house or at your house, and sometimes do nothing more than help you get up off the floor and get back in a chair or get back in your bed. Those were the memorable times for me as a caregiver. In fact, one of the most memorable for me was not a serious automobile accident in Huntsville. Not a lot of damage to the vehicles, no injuries, but yet we were required as an ambulance service to show up. And I can remember coming around to the driver's door of one of the vehicles where sat an elderly gentleman, maybe in his mid-80s, and I asked him if he was hurt. And he said no, he wasn't hurt, but he sat there in tears. And I asked him what was wrong. And he told me that he had simply went to the store to get a gallon of milk, but had left his invalid wife at home alone. And he was devastated that he was in a position not to be able to get back home to care for her, and that broke my heart. Those are the calls that I remember that were important to me as a caregiver, because I was in a position to be able to offer some comfort and some aid and some reassurance that someone would go and be with her and take care of her. Not the life and death things that you would normally associate with HIMSI or emergency services. Those are the exception rather than the rule, but not for me. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had to do that. And over the course of years that I was married to my husband, 32 years to be exact, I married him right out of high school and thought that we would be growing old together and be holding each other's hands when we died. I just knew that that's the way it would be. But back in 2007, he was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And over the following 13 months, I found myself in a position of having to be a caregiver to my spouse. And it wasn't by choice. And I know many of you are in a position to where you are in a position of having to be a caregiver, and certainly not by choice. And maybe feeling some bitterness and some resentment, maybe even some anger. But having been through it myself, I still consider it a blessing to be able to give the gift of comfort. And that has been so important to me. My husband died after 13 months of sheer agony. And I loved him very dearly. And I knew after he died that I did not want to be alone. I was too young to live the rest of my life alone, even though I had a wonderful family. My children were grown. So I went on a seeking mission to find the man that I would spend the rest of my days with. And I had a list of what I wanted in a man. And I ticked off that list. And God put with me the man that had none of those qualities. He was 5 feet nothing instead of 6'4". He had a very dependent family. His children still required much of him. And that was certainly not one of the things on my list. He was not financially well off. He's okay. And he was not in wonderful health. But I fell in love with that man. And the third day I knew him, he sat me down and told me that he had Parkinson's. And I once again found myself in a position of being a potential caregiver. But I had a choice this time. And I didn't hesitate. I knew that God put that man in my life for a reason. And I'm so blessed. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity and to perhaps have another opportunity to care for someone that I love so much and to be a blessing to them, because in giving you receive so much more.
Is he still alive?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we've been married a short time. In fact, he was going to come this evening and he thought he would make me nervous, so he opted to stay home. To look at him, you would not know that he had such a debilitating illness, and it is progressive. And I'm sure that over the course of years, it will progress and become much more difficult. And his dependence upon me will increase over time. But that's okay. What a blessing going into a relationship to know and to be able to plan and to prepare for these events. When marrying anyone else or being in a relationship with anyone else, something just as devastating or even more devastating could happen in the blink of an eye, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Tomorrow is a gift, and I'm thankful.
So how did your children, his children, deal with having you as their new mama?
Well, his children are grown, but they were still very dependent upon him to be Dad, Mr. Mom, and they are doing quite well.
How did your other children work to have all of you together?
Well, my children are grown, so we're all in our own households and separate from each other physically, but we still depend on each other very much. We have a very close family.
What would you recommend to people when they find out that there's going to be a possibility of a disease that may be for the rest of their lifetime, like what's going on?
The first thing that I would recommend is to educate yourself.
How do you do that? What do you do?
You can begin with your physicians, get all of the information you can from your physicians, and also know that if you don't like the answers you're getting from your physician, they work for you. You have choices. There are other physicians. And you keep seeking and seeking and seeking answers until you get the answers that you're satisfied with. And there's always the internet, there's the library, there are civic organizations, there's organizations such as this one that can offer encouragement and information and help you with resources as well.
What are the steps that you need to take
Initially,
to be prepared for the passing of a spouse, for instance?
I don't know that you can ever be prepared, and I can't say whether or not knowing that it's coming or having something devastating happen and lose a spouse with no warning is better or worse. Of course, there are advantages to knowing and being able to prepare. You need to plan out financially for yourself and prepare. Make sure that you know about finances. If you're the caregiver, know what those financial situations are, and if your spouse is, or the person you're giving care to is in a position to be able to tell you, get as much information as you can, and make sure that your business affairs are in order.
What are the business affairs you need to have in order?
A power of attorney is one thing that we found to be very helpful. Once my spouse was to the point where he wasn't able to come and go, and he was pretty much homebound or hospitalized, to take care of business, I had to be able to sign documents and sign checks and things and take care of some financial things. So that was very important to have in place.
Mm-hmm. How did you plan for the finances? How did you plan for the finances?
Because my husband died in such a very short time, there wasn't an awful lot of time to prepare. Fortunately, we had always been very conservative in the way we lived, and we had never lived beyond our means. And I was very fortunate that when he died, it did not devastate me financially. I was able to carry on and continue staying in our home, but I know others have not been so fortunate. I had a good friend that lost a husband to heart failure, and she was not familiar with their finances, and she didn't know about their mortgage, and she was not able to keep their home. And it's difficult enough to lose a spouse quickly, and she also lost her home.
How did you keep your home and so forth? How did you plan or live conservatively? How does one live conservatively?
It's different for everybody, and I have always been I guess because we struggled so much during the early part of our marriage that when we finally were comfortable and had the means for some of the nicer things, they weren't important any longer because we knew what was important, and it was the family.
Brenda, thank you so much for sharing with us. I just know when tears came in your eyes that you were really a caring person, and then you had several opportunities to be a caregiver, so I really appreciate that. And we want all of you that would like to have, we have a booklet called Joy in Caregiving, and it's actually 7 major points that can happen so that caregiving will not get you down, although my husband would tell you that it gets me down every once in a while. I get a little bit angry and I have to deal with that. And I told him this morning, oh well, I guess I shouldn't tell you what I wanted to break the window out or something. But it's just a lot of stress on the family because it's like Sherry Muller said last week, it's a new normal. It's not normal, it's a new normal. And so I want you to know that just to give you a little tip of what some of the things are, you know, the baby boomers now, there's supposed to be, where there were 17 million just a couple of years ago, now there are 70 million that are going to be caregivers. 70 million people that, and one of the reasons is just like when my parents and grandparents were growing up or getting older, they didn't have kidney dialysis and things of this sort that they have. However, my mom lived to be 96 with her right mind just about to the last day, and my grandmother was 98, so they didn't have all the comforts, but they just had these genes that kept them living and living. Of course, my mother raised a garden, and we were 90, she was 90, and we came from Pennsylvania to Arkansas, and she had that garden and said, Mother, can we help you hoe or pull weeds? She said, no, that's the way I get my exercise, and she wouldn't let anyone touch her garden. So she ate right and exercised, except when the 18 months my daughter took care of her. And then she learned about fast food and special at McDonald's where they had ice cream specials. So she went down. I just wanted you to know that it's going to skyrocket and we need to be prepared. Everybody should have short-term and long-term, in my opinion, caregiving so that we can have that. And I have a friend, Gail Sheehy, and a lot of people know her from her book, Passages. And she said when she was doing some caregiving, well, you know, it's just what I do. I'm a daughter, you know, it's just what I'm expected to do. But in fact, today it's become a professional level job. When you're a caregiver, you have to really learn a lot yourselves from the internet and from other people. And also, to persuade our aging parents, we want you to be independent as long as you can. We want to know what you want done and what you don't want done. We want to know things like which hospital you want to go to, and there are quite a number of things that you want to find out from that person. That also gives you the freedom to maybe encourage them in a certain direction they should take, and to make sure that their credit cards are paid for and their house is paid for and their car is paid for and they don't need another new Lincoln or whatever it is. There's just a lot of things you can encourage them to do. And one of the persons that you're caregiving for may ask you to do things you don't want to do, you really don't want to do. And I know one time when Tony asked him to give me a bath, I'm not going to do that. I meant just wash my back. I did that. But anyway, sometimes they ask you to do things you don't want to do. But if you have long-term care, you can have maybe a nurse or somebody like Brenda Bell come in and help you out. But 5, it's important to hold a family get-together. One of the things that we did, we sent out a text message to all well, we only have 3 grandchildren and 2 children. Said, okay, pick a week that you're going to check with us that's your week, and say, how may I help you? Just like they do at Walmart. And see if there's anything, light bulbs that need to be changed or whatever it is. And there's just quite a number of things that the caregiver can ask for help. Our neighbor brought up a whole meal the other day. I like that plan. And today my husband said that another neighbor brought over some soup. I think I want to be sick every day if they're going to keep that up. But we have to be willing to receive. And that's very difficult for me. I have never been one in my lifetime to receive anything. And my good friend Sherry Mullers drove all the way from Gunnersville down here just to help. I do want to remember the example of Jesus in Hebrews 12:2. He says, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. He endured the cross because he knew what was coming afterwards. And we have a lot of things to endure, but the wonderful thing is that we can also glean a lot from it. I love Tony being a Marine, German, you know, all that stuff, engineer. He never would let me drive. And now I get to drive him around. I think that's so exciting. Of course, he does say, turn right, turn left, and he gives me directions. But caregiving can be a joyful experience. It's time you can spend with your loved ones that if our daughter got killed instantly and lived 10 minutes after the car hit her. So we didn't get to have any of that time. But with, if you know you can have a few seconds or minutes or hours or days or weeks with your loved one, that's a good thing for caregiving. Remember, you can get this whole booklet for no charge, and I think Thaddeus Brooks is going to let us know about how you can do that. Feel free to call to either the 800 number or the regular number, or email or text or whatever you want to do. I'm Bonnie Libhart, along with Brenda Bell and Sherry Muller and Tony Libhart and all the Thaddeus Brooks and everybody, and we thank you for watching. Bless your heart for watching.